Greetings and salutations to our fine podcast audience. Welcome to Three Peas in a Pod, episode 262.
We made it.
In our mini-series, What We Didn't Say on Sunday.
Oh.
It's a mini-series?
It's a mini-series. Or it might be mega-series by the time we got to
Yeah, I was going to say. Is this not the first episode?
I don't know.
No, last week we did some.
I think we have titled last week's
I apologize.
What We Didn't Say on Sunday.
Episode 2.
Whatever.
262 of the original.
Yeah.
Episode 2 of this sub-series.
That's right.
The spinoff.
Okay.
It's just it's a category.
Okay.
It's a category, a subcategory of the Three Peas in a Pod podcast.
Okay.
I think of all the things I didn't say Sunday.
That I should not have said, but I'm glad I didn't say.
Yes.
Yes. So, hey, Charlie, you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Can you restart the clock for me? Yeah. We don't want the people to have to listen to us too long.
Yeah.
So we have a clock, by the way, ladies.
It tries to keep us.
It keeps us on track. So
we know. Wrap it up.
That's right.
So when you get to minute 16 and you thought they must not know how long they've been talking. No, you were incorrect.
We know.
We wanted it longer.
I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah.
It's right
It's
in front
all
of
we know for sure. And we do
That's
know
right.
how long we've been talking.
That's right. So, as I said, little caveat, we are talking about what we did not talk about on Sunday. So that means if you did not join us for church on Sunday, you did not hear the message that we brought to you. It might be helpful if you knew what that was or listened to that or watched it. Because
it's a video just before this one.
Is it? Probably is.
Most likely.
In the feed.
Most
Probably
likely.
is. So last Sunday.
Well, and let me add one more caveat.
Oh, okay.
What that also means is we don't have any questions.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if you don't like hearing us just add more to what we talked about on Sunday, you should send in a question.
That's true.
You should send in a question. If you thought they talked already a really long time on
Yes,
Sunday about
yes.
this, and there was just one of them talking this long about it, and now the
And I didn't
other
like
two
it then.
showed up.
That's right.
That's right.
So if you don't like that, send us in a question. We will answer your questions. We spent a lot of episodes answering
A
questions.
ton. Link is in the description.
There you go.
Send it in.
So now you're stuck with us.
That's
what
right.
we think.
So we've been talking about marriage. And on Sunday, I brought up the idea that in every marriage relationship, as we've been talking about, marriage is a covenant, and we want to live in a covenant kind of way. But in every marriage covenant relationship is what we would call a hierarchy of needs. And a lot of times what happens in marriages is they get out of balance because we find that one or both of the spouses are hanging out on a very low level of need, and they're wanting to jump up to another one. And sometimes one's up here and one's down there, and we're not equally sharing the load together, and it causes all kind of disruption. And we also know that in our church, and a lot of you who watch and listen to the podcast are a lot of parents. And one of the things that Nathan brought up the other day, and I thought was very wise to say, is how parenting and children jumps into that system of living in a marriage relationship, and it disrupts it often or makes it more difficult or adds some challenges. I guess that's the best way to put it. And so you were thinking that maybe we'd have a conversation to point some direction in that kind of way.
Can I say before we go too far, just for everybody that might not remember their intro to psych course where we heard the discussion of hierarchy of needs, why don't you get a summary of that and how that gets off track in marriage to begin with?
Well, basically, the hierarchy of needs that was originally, it was a guy named Maslow came up with it. He talked about how you have to get your basic needs met first, your survival kind of stuff. You got to live indoors and eat some food and drink some water.
That's right.
In order to live. And then once you get that taken care of, then you can start moving up to more sophisticated kinds of needs or more, non-essential kinds of needs. Things of like, love and sex and, fulfillment and those kinds of things. And then you get higher and higher up the thing. So what I had talked about on Sunday was there's basically 3 kind of levels of needs within marriage. There's survival needs. There's just making the house run, just getting the bills paid and, just living. That's the kind of
which we know, and has been for years. I haven't seen the stats that one of the big reasons people get divorces is nobody takes care of the money.
That's right.
Money and those basic needs eventually, no matter how good the sex is,
That's right.
how good all the other stuff is, how much you care about the person. If these basic needs aren't met, things probably going to blow up.
Yeah, yeah. And so once if and when you get those kinds of things taken care of, then you can start thinking about things like, quality time together and sex and having a hobby and, fulfilling not just a job to get by, but a job that I love and I want, connecting with friends and family and all of those guys. Having, for a married couple, I get to hang out with my guy friends and she gets to hang out with her girlfriends and things of that nature. That's where you find out, that's what you find on the second level. The third level gets even higher. That's when we're talking about intimacy and true sexual fulfillment, where we're really connecting and we're achieving dreams that we had dreamed when we were younger, and just seeing a lot of aspirational kind of stuff happen. But you don't get up to those levels until you start. And one of the big points that I made on Sunday was you got to go together, because if one person starts existing up here while the other spouse is down here, that causes all kinds of problems, resentment and frustration on both ends.
Yeah.
And somebody's probably not being taken care of in that situation. So
it's certainly not mutual submission at that point.
Not at all. Not at all. And in fact, sometimes if a spouse moves up here, they're looking back at the other spouse and going, what's wrong? Why can't you come up here with me and enjoy life? And the other one's down there like, I'm just trying to survive. I'm going day to day. And then they're resentful of each other.
That's right.
And so it causes all kinds of problems. And so we talked about how do we, because your marriage is only as strongest as the partner who's on the lowest level. Because that's where your marriage is, because your relationship is a mutual thing. It's not something we both individually experience. So wherever the lowest level is that you're operating on right now, that's where you start. And you go down together and you go, okay, how do we lift one another up? How do we go up the hierarchy of needs together so that we can? Because I believe God wants you to experience all of that. But you gotta do it in the right way, and like it said, with mutual submission and love and support for each other. So that's the premise from last Sunday.
That is the premise.
So
and then you throw some kids in there.
Yeah, and that's what Nathan had brought up, and I thought that was a good point.
Well, and maybe even, I think we're going to primarily talk about kids, but I thought when you were saying it, I think, and I like the way that you said it, is we've got to come down so we can both go up together. Life in general, the idea that we will, I think this is more maybe of a modern idea, that I have these needs and I work my way up to the top. And then once I get up to this level, I'm fine. I'm up here and I'm never going to come back down here. But there's seasons of life that push me down to a place where I got to get back in survival. So you go through a really difficult season of life with lots of trials. You have a health scare. You have, and I would throw this, you have kids thrown into the mix. And then certainly if one of those kids starts having trouble or any of that, it throws you back into survival mode for a little bit. And so to say all that is this isn't this idea that we have, and I think this is where many of us get, I think it's where even our relationships struggle. I'm sure our mental health struggles as well. When I think of life as this linear, progressive, up and to the right thing, and anytime I find myself in what we'd call a setback, I start to think of as I've been set back in life. But I have not been set back in life. I went through a normal thing in life, which is trials and difficulty and trouble. And there are times in my life where I have to focus on what, in your terms, lower needs. These just sometimes in life, I do just feel like I'm surviving.
Well, and problems have a way of pulling us back to the basic needs.
Right.
And like Jason was saying, I was thinking, it would be really abnormal if you've been in a marriage for a long time or whatever, and one partner finds out they have a life-threatening illness, and the other person goes, yeah, but I have something scheduled with my friends.
Right. Yes.
Everybody sees that as off. But if everybody was existing, they go, well, I can't come do this thing with you because I have and everybody, oh, yeah, that's true. I forgot you had the thing with your friends. But when a basic need really is needed, it's expected that the person will come down and help you with that.
That's right.
Well, that's what the partnership's all about.
That's right. We're going to carry this together through life. And the truth is, if people haven't realized that's going to happen, you need to, I don't know, you need to be aware of the world. That's the way that's the way the world works.
And I think I said this on Sunday. I said, if you got married because you thought it would be less work,
right,
you got married for the wrong reason.
Right.
That's right.
No, that's not a really honorable reason to get married, because I'm going to get everything I want.
Right.
I'm going to get my dreams fulfilled if I get married to this person. Well, that's more pressure on a person that is reasonable.
Yeah.
Well,
that's right.
and I think, and so the reason I brought that up is because I do think there are a lot of people, and probably of all ages, but I talk to lots of people in my age who for the first time are dealing with setbacks. Because when you're going through, I get out of high school, then I go to college, then I start a career. Everything is kind of moving up and to the right. Everything is kind of going the way it's supposed to go. And then life just gets hard. And I think, or marriage gets hard, or parenting gets hard, or my career gets hard. And what I think is I've done something wrong, or something in this is broken. And the easiest thing to do is just, well, this marriage is just bad. I should throw it away and go get one where we can all exist up here together. And what we're talking about is there are times where I have to, just because of what happens in life, is we both come down to this level because this is what's necessary. And then we build back up here. But there's probably coming another time, or at least another season, where we're going to be back down here. But the good news is, at least this is how I see it with my wife, is we get to do that together. Because otherwise, in a similar way of, in my relationship with God, it'd be a lot harder if I wasn't doing it with him. Yeah. And so God comes and sits with me on those lower levels.
And my relationship with God would also be harder if he hadn't determined that we would have brothers and sisters do that with us.
That's right.
If I just only had to have a relationship, and I say this in the most crass way, with an invisible character I've actually never seen.
Right.
Right. That I believe, you all know what I believe. But that's what it appears like to other people.
Sure.
I have this relationship with a person I've never seen. I talk to him all the time.
So I think when a lot of us have kids, once again, you have a similar view of what kids is going to be. I did. I think everyone does. Sure. Of it's also up and to the right. And so what's going to be is I've got me and my spouse, and we're bebopping along and everything's going good. And we've gotten this place and we have this love for one another. And, we've probably got for many people, at least I think the ideal is, not that this is how it happens for everyone, but, we'll be married for a little bit and we'll get our careers kind of set up and we're up here, man. We're existing on this level. Then we have a kid, and what it feels like is we're just bringing them up to this level. And then what happens is that kid don't sleep because you got a baby, and we're living on survival mode for a long time.
The first 8 weeks of a child's life, it feels like survival.
Well, for that kid, at least in the history of the world, has been a survival game, because in the history of the world, that is the time where a lot of human beings don't survive.
And God made it that way, I'm convinced, because we need each other. And he made, having grown up on a cattle farm, a calf can make it pretty quickly on their own.
Right.
They're up walking and running in the first few hours, and they certainly need some help on other things. But a baby, you got years before that sucker can even mobilize by themselves. You got a little time before they can even crawl by themselves.
That's right.
So,
but then you build up, you build back up, and you and that little kid, you actually get along. They have a little personality. You like that whole thing. And then suddenly you go, well, now we want to get them involved in some stuff. And they do that. But that adds busyness to the schedule. And you're kind of back into, man, we have less time for me and my spouse.
And me and my boyfriends and girlfriends.
And my golf game.
Whatever
you're
into.
All
shifts.
All of those things. And now we're back down here. And then we build back up. And then they go through puberty. and it feels like that kid's against you. And now you and the spouse, we're back down here in survival. We're trying to survive the teenager, and you're going back up. And so the reason I bring all that up is I think for many people, parenting in lots of ways is a trial at times.
Sure.
That I go through. And there are these seasons. And even when things are going well, there's so much activity and need that this child requires of us as a couple. And there's good and godly things I want to do. I want to invest in this kid, and that takes time.
Yeah.
I want to get involved. All of these things require a lot from me. How do I balance that?
Well, again, I think the important thing I would say, and I'm going to let him, I'm sorry for interrupting
go ahead.
Jason, is you better make sure you're both on the same page.
Oh, yeah.
Because I've seen a whole lot of either a dad or a mom sees that the kid really needs basic needs. And so they go down to level 1 and another parent doesn't. And they put all of that on one shoulder.
Yeah.
Or the other, they both come down. Well, one parent don't really trust the other one very much with the basic needs of the kid. And that feels that we're not on the same page. We have to be on the same page. We have to be honest with each other about this thing, or it'll get everything off track. And everything above that's going to, you can't keep it where it ought to be if you don't get together on that bottom level.
Yeah. And I think what I was thinking of is both of y'all were talking is, I've spent a lot of time, as I know y'all have too, thinking about these kind of things and trying to teach this to people within our church. And I think for a long time, the way that I looked at it wasn't completely wrong, but it wasn't completely right either. And what I mean by that is I looked at it and I think I taught it in such a way as to say, okay, there's the parenting part of your marriage, and then there's the romantic part of your marriage, and then there's the friendship part of your marriage, and it's like spinning plates, that old thing. You got to get all of them, balanced and get it all. So there's times when you got to pour into your kids, but then you need to ship them off and go pour into your marriage, and then you need to do something. All of these things were kind of like independent of each other, and for the purposes of what I'm trying to teach now, I feel like I'm trying to say, no, that wasn't exactly the right model. I think all of it is one thing. And it has to be all integrated into one covenant partnership relationship that is my marriage, my family life. And I think that's a more healthy view of that, because the truth is, if I segment it out too much, something gets left behind.
That's right.
Something is deficient. And so how do I see all of these things as parts of my one life together with this person that God blessed me with, that we're doing life together. And this is my life partner. And we're going to do this as a team. It's a team approach to the relationship rather than a segmented kind of idea. Does that make sense? That's what I'm seeing now.
It does to me. Yeah. And I think it's more biblical as well. And we probably haven't said that well until I like where you're headed with that, because the truth is, as a follower of Jesus, which is what we're teaching all of this under, I'm already in a covenant relationship with Jesus. I then, under the umbrella of his covenant, I make a decision with another follower of Christ. We're going to enter a covenant under his love with him as our partner. This is not going to sound completely right, and y'all can help me fix it. There isn't any more my life and your life. The two become one. We have a life.
That's right.
We have now created a new life, which isn't us. Now I'm still an individual, and I can mess up the us, or I can enhance the us. But my life has now been melded into this, just as when I decide to become a follower of Christ, the covenant, I don't get an individual covenant. I get molded into the covenant that God's already made with people.
That's right.
And there's now my life as a follower of Christ with all followers of Christ. And then there's this, that's our family relation. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I have to, if I don't consider it a one life thing, something will get out of order.
Yeah, I think the issue that happens for most, so I agree with what you're saying, and this is something I talked about when we were doing some family podcast stuff in the past of what happens in at least, there are two different really cultural ways to view life. There's an individualist world, which is where we live. There's a collectivist world, which is where like the Bible was written in, and most Asian cultures, some South American cultures are still this way, and certainly most Arab cultures.
It's got to probably be some pre-modern Asian cultures because we have westernized a lot of them.
A lot of them, but even I'd say lots of China is still in a collectivist culture, and I know like Korea has a lot of that. Is now neither one of those is God ordained. There is this thing that exists in the middle, which is this kind of biblical kind of culture, which is, there is a collectivist way. So like a way to think of it is, and we talked about this on the Family Movie Night podcast, on the movie Encanto is a good example of this, which is the family consumes the individual and the individual doesn't exist anymore. You have no needs or desires. You just have to give yourself. And so there are people who certainly kind of rail against that part. But there's this other really hyper individualist, which is where most of us live, which is everything exists for me. Even if you take Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the final one is self-actualization, which is I become a fully me, what I was always intended. And there's a Christian way of baptizing of the me God intended me to be, which that's true. There's a you God intended you to be, but there's a version of that we take to be it's all of my dreams and ideas and things I've always...
God's dream and my dream almost always wind up being the same.
Right. And so what has happened in individualist cultures is we have started to say the family exists to serve the individual. And so if I'm a parent, and I think this happens with lots of parents, my job is to help each one of my kids, which is why individualist cultures have really shrunk it down from we have lots of kids to one would be great because it's a lot easier with one. Find their individuality, self-actualization. And the family becomes about how do I help this kid and this kid and this kid become the me they were intended to be. Not the family is a unit. And part of me becoming the actual me God intended for me to be is for me to learn mutual submission within the family and say the family is actually bigger than me. Not to this collectivist extent that I have no needs and all of this. In a godly family, the family exists where it starts on the basis of a couple, a husband and a wife who have said, we will live in mutual submission to one another. And then we have these kids and we're inviting them into our covenant for a period of time. They get to exist in this thing where we are submitting to them, but we're also training them to submit to us. And we're all kind of doing this together. But all of that exists under this bigger banner of we exist in the family of God and we have things that we're submitting to them and they're submitting to us. And we're all supporting one another and doing this. And so, and I know this is coming in when this video comes out in your upcoming sermon, because I've already read and worked with that, is this idea of part of the way that then works in a marriage is there are these periods of time, and I'd say, because I'm in kind of the middle of it, I thought when my kids were younger, I thought there's going to come a time where they're just going to require less time from me. That has not happened yet. It's just different time because they have lots of different activities. And so I know you use this example in yours of, if you've got kids and they got all these different activities to go to, maybe instead of saying, mom will take Monday and Thursday nights, and dad will take Tuesday and Wednesday night, and we'll split up the kids' activities because we're trying to make sure every kid gets a thing they need. Maybe if it's possible, mom and dad should go, we're going to go together on Monday night so that that's time we can be together while the kid's doing the thing. Instead of focusing on that. What it also may mean, and I got 4 kids, so we're in the middle of it. It may mean I have to say to a kid, you got to pick one thing. because the whole family cannot exist to make sure you get to do gymnastics and soccer and choir and this, and also your sister gets to do 4 different unique things, and all the family finances have to go to.
And mom and dad also get to do 3 or 4 things that they want to do.
Well, in order to live that kind of life, like you just said, Nathan, it does require segmenting everyone off into their own individual silos to go pursue everything that they think God has called them to. And what you do lose in that process many times is that teamwork, family, connected, communal kind of sense that everybody, I think, at least people that I hear, that's what we're all wanting anyway. But we think, because it's the water we swim in our culture. It's pulling us in that individualistic fulfillment kind of direction. And so we go and do that, but yet we're still harboring this deep need. I hear this in a lot of families that I work with is we want to be together and we want to, know each other and spend time together and love one another. Yes, you do. But if you're going to segment everybody off to go pursue their dreams and support everybody and lift, and we think we're lifting everybody up to this higher level, but we're not together anymore. So it's like you're getting one thing, but you're losing the thing you say you want.
That's right.
And so we got to figure out how to bring that together, and that requires some work, and requires some discernment and a lot of some sacrifice, to be quite honest, to get what it is that you ultimately want.
Well, it is sacrifice. Sacrifice.
Well, it's sacrificing that vision.
It is sacrifice.
You know what I mean?
There's no. If I decide to go buy a BMW, I am sacrificing buying something else.
That's right.
Yeah. I tell my kids every yes is a no.
That's right. And it is a sacrifice, but all sacrifice is giving up something you want for something you want more.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it has to start with a hierarchy where somebody knows the correct priorities and continues to set them for the family. And it only really works well in a covenant-based relationship where it's the way God designed it. There's a covenant, I'm under God's covenant. I'm melded into his covenant. Another person who's there, we join together in our covenant under that. God then blesses us if we decide that and he decides that and it all happens, we get children. They are then they're in that order. And we know it. They don't get to now determine, I have my own priorities outside of this. I mean, there will come a time where they can determine.
Well,
but that doesn't start when they're young. I'm telling them, this is a priority of our family. This is the way we work. And it will require mom and dad to have to shift from where they were before there were children, where we got to do lots of things Becky and I were married 7 years before we had a kid. And it did change things.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it has to.
But we hoped we were ready for that. We wanted that.
Well, yeah.
And you have to understand, once again, that's why I brought the thing earlier. There are times me and my wife are existing down here, but to the point that Ed's made, and I know Jason makes in the sermon as well, it's about us doing that together. Yeah. And the goal of, and I remember, maybe it's because I got married so young, but I got married at 19 and we had no money. We just had no money. But I've said this to other people who get married young, you're not going to have as much money. But if your goal is we just want to be together, you can do that.
Well, it doesn't require much money to be together.
No, but if your goal is we want to be married and be together, as long as you can hold that as your goal, you can get through lots of stuff. I said, because right now in our parenting life, there are times where we're down here just surviving and we don't have the quality time. Just because the amount of time we have to spend doing this, we don't get as much as we did when we didn't have kids, and we don't get this. So what we do is we go, hey, we're going to together work on how can we get this stuff done so we can have a little bit of quality time, but even the stuff we're doing together, can we do that together?
Well, and I'll talk, and I know we're going to be at our time limit here soon, but I think about how much our culture and the evil one has used the desires of our culture. He didn't create these. He just looked inside of us and said, hey, let's go with that. Of this thing of most coupling relationships in our country for a good time now are unmarried. Mm-hmm. And so you start with these highest needs, sex, and fun. And you don't spend much time on, hey, we're still paying bills separate. We still have separate. We may live together, but I'm maintaining this other place in case it don't work out. I could go over there if I need to. And then if a lot of times even we have a kid, but we haven't built any trust on, hey, I can trust you to help me with these basic things. I haven't agreed to help you with these things. In fact, I know a lot of people that have gone through this thing at the top, and they keep their money separate forever. They keep their dreams separate forever. They're going to do these very intimate things and have a kid together that they say they're going to raise together. But our culture has decided we're individuals. We had this one individual together. We're going to work on that individual together. And it does occasionally work, but not very often. It doesn't produce the best result for the two people that decided to have the one person they were going to work on together. Sometimes it works out okay for that one person and the two that started it. But often because we didn't work on getting, can I trust you? Can we figure out how to do these before we go up to these other things? It just screws everything up. And then, it's become a problem. I don't know any better way to say it. We said, and when we were talking about this, we live in a county with a higher than national average where marriages are just in trouble. And the truth is, if we were just talking about coupled up relationships, not just married people, but people who doing life like married folks but ain't married, those are also in trouble. We haven't solved it by getting rid of the piece of paper and the legal document and all of that people say. It hadn't made it better. So I know that the old guy, that's his thing I ought to say. That's my part in this thing, to say all that stuff.
Your fault.
Well, yeah, that's true.
I do think ultimately and it's why we said this in the last podcast episode, we've been saying it's what we're trying to get to through this is that regardless of what works or doesn't work, it's about the way, it's what the life that God invited us into, which is God has a covenant and he's invited you and I to be a part of that, where Jesus is king and he has a kingdom. And it's not Jesus invites me to help me become the best me I can be, and he'll help me and my story and my dreams go the way I want it to be. He's asking me to get on board with him. And there are obviously benefits of that. There are the benefits of life eternal with God. And there are benefits and rewards that come along with those things. But it is not everything in your marriage will go the way you want it to go, and everything with your kid will go the way you want it to go, and everything your career will go the way it's going to go. And marriage is a part of this thing, which is we're entering into a God-like covenant with one another of mutual submission and laying down our lives for one another. And then when we have kids, we're inviting those kids. They get to, in a similar way that God does for us, they reap the benefits of our covenant relationship. Because eventually they did not make a covenant with us.
That's right.
The kids did not come to me. When they got born, they did not look at me and go, I'm for you, for us, for life. But I said to them, I'm for you.
Yeah.
And I'm for us. And that's for life. And my hope is eventually the kids return that favor to me. And I'm hoping that one day they go off and do the same with someone else. Yeah. That they go off and they want to do this, and whether that's in a marriage or with the people of God, and they get brought into
God
that.
designed the world to flourish.
But me and my spouse have to be clear on that when it comes to parenting, is we are doing a task. This is a thing that we've been called to do together, which is love these kids and raise these kids. And so for a period of time, they're going to consume a lot of our needs and our time and our energy. And we have to prioritize us, absolutely. But prioritizing us doesn't also mean I don't have to live down here sometimes.
Yes.
Because there is another version, which is I'm up here and the kids down here starving.
Yeah.
I'm up here doing my own thing.
Well, there's a version as well where I don't prioritize. I pay total attention to the kid and what's best for the kid. And I don't pay any attention to the original covenant that I made.
No, absolutely.
And right. Once the kid moves out, lo and behold, the covenant left.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, yeah, because it wasn't all together.
That's right. That's right.
So we existed on two different planes so long that now we don't even see each other. We're two different people. So we're trying to keep all of that from happening. So, all right. That's enough of that, guys.
That is.
I'm going to put a stop to it.
Stop it.
End it. So, since, I don't even know, this went overtime. So, because our clock was a little off, but that's okay. It's okay. We said what we wanted to say. So, come back next week where you may get what we didn't say this coming Sunday, or you might get something else.
An answer to a question.
Maybe. We'll see. I don't know.
We might could do both.
It's just surprises all the way around. So come back. We'll talk. We'll see what we got. Have a good week. Bye.